Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to talk about WVS's approach to dog population management. My name's Francesca. My role is International Projects Manager at WVS, and I've been with the charity for 2 years, having worked previously for Dog Stress Worldwide in the UK. For those that don't know, as of 2023, WVS is a sister charity to Dog Stress. My presentation will give you an understanding of who we are, what we do, and our approach to DPM using a few case studies and videos. So the Worldwide Veterinary Service is an international NGO that was launched in 2003 to address a critical lack of veterinary care available to animals in resource-limited parts of the world. Our work firmly follows a One Health approach with projects that protect public health by improving animal health. Our work has expanded significantly over the last 23 years. Over the last 2 years, we've worked in around 33 countries across all our programs, and whilst we don't work in the Balkans, you will see common themes in our approach which apply to all countries working with dogs. So there are quite a few departments of WVS, and today I will be showcasing our flagship program, Mission Rabies, the international training centres, our veterinary task force, and WVS Dog Pop. So WVS and DPM. WVS is first and foremost a capacity builder and technical advisor for DPM projects to governments, municipalities, universities, and NGOs, providing surgical training and programmatic guidance to graduates and seasoned vets and managers running DPM projects. And while we're not a grant funder, depending on the context, we'll help with project costs during training and specialist equipment that will have long-term benefits. On the whole, we don't run our own long-term solo campaigns, but rather assist groups that do. So Mission Rabies, it's what we're known for. With our Mission Rabies work, we partner with in-country stakeholders to coordinate large-scale rabies vaccination campaigns and set up rabies and surveillance, such as helplines, dog bite victim tracing, and rabies testing. Rabies vaccination campaigns. And last year, we vaccinated 2.2 million dogs. We also run education campaigns so that communities understand the disease and what to do if they're bitten. Last year, we educated 5 million people. And we are often heavily involved in facilitating the creation of national strategic plans against rabies with the aim of controlling and eliminating the disease from vulnerable communities. So rabies and dog population management. So whilst we do on occasion run spay and neuter campaigns in parallel with our vaccination campaigns, Mission Rabies' core work is rapidly getting vaccine into dogs, ensuring through surveying that we're vaccinating at least 70% of dog populations to disrupt the transmission of the disease. But there's no denying that DPM, through spay and neuter initiatives, complements rabies control, stabilizing populations, preventing the birth of new unvaccinated dogs, and enhancing dog welfare and life expectancy. We found anecdotally that rabies vaccination campaigns help to shift negative perceptions of dogs from viewing them as a threat to recognizing their sentience and uplifting their status. In doing so, municipalities and community members can avoid resorting to inhumane methods of controlling dog populations, like culling or translocation, that we know are ineffective, unsustainable, and desensitize communities against violence. So as the speakers rightly said yesterday, dog population management is multifaceted and cannot be undertaken successfully or long-term in silo or without approvals. I recommend doing stakeholder analysis to make sure necessary local groups are around the table and given areas of responsibility. Surveying is also becoming a prerequisite for us, helping us identify target areas and monitoring our impacts. We often have education workshops running in schools slightly ahead of campaigns. This works really well as an advertising tool. And also with community awareness, it differs from country to country we're working in. We work alongside religious institutions, local leadership, old school way of using megaphones, driving through villages with megaphones, and putting up posters, and obviously social media. Our skilled catchers use butterfly nets to catch skittish, free-roaming dogs. And right now, there's a really big push for hand catching of dogs, wherever possible. Safe transportation is also a really big focus for us, with journey length, biosecurity, and temperatures being seriously considered. The teams adhere to the same core sterilization protocols, which are adapted to local contexts, but that prioritize individual dog welfare throughout their journey. We have used microchipping within sterilization campaigns that when they've been available to us, but this is not a regular occurrence. As mentioned before, we look to work with stakeholders who have demonstrated a level of sustainability with their work so that the impacts of our training and our partnership can continue. So WVS often provides care to injured dogs, and whilst we're not a rehoming organisation, our teams have found homes for more than 400 animals last year. So mentioned yesterday, food waste management and breeding and sales regulation are huge topics within DPM system, but which WVS aren't directly involved with at the moment. So the training centres, this is the core of WVS, is our international training centres, and it's where we make a large contribution to DPM. These were set up to improve the level of animal welfare by improving the veterinary sector in countries where vets do not get extensive training on companion animals or opportunities to perform surgeries. Through our centres, we provide training to new graduates and seasoned vets who want to sharpen their skills and learn peer-reviewed protocols. We're also hoping to inspire vets and vet nurses to choose to work in the dog population management sector, when for many, working in livestock or private practice is more of a common route. In 2025, across all our programs, we trained almost 5,000 students and veterinary professionals and sterilized over 43,000 animals. So we have 7 international training centres around the world. They're known as our ITCs. The Hicks in Goa, Uti, and now Hope in Aurangabad. One on the Galapagos Islands, Blantyre in Malawi, Chiang Mai in Thailand, and our most recent centre is Phnom Penh in Cambodia. All of these are catered to providing complete veterinary care to the dogs in the surrounding communities, with owners bringing their dogs to the centres and staff working through surrounding communities to catch and collect dogs for sterilisation. The surgical training courses are 2 weeks of hands-on experience with around 20% of lectures, all under the supervision of trainers. Vets travel from far and wide to join these courses. The ITCs also organise off-site outreach campaigns for dogs located further afield where issues with populations have been flagged. I'd like to share an example of an outreach that was organised by WVS Hicks and Mission Rabies with local stakeholders in Ponda in Goa. Like many growing communities, Ponder faced the challenge how to care for and coexist with a rising street dog population. In our streets, and neighborhoods. So a plan was set into motion. A 30-day mass sterilization and vaccination drive right here in Ponder. It began with a question. Not just how many, but how best. How could we combine science and compassion to create lasting, humane solutions for Ponder's street dogs? We began by going on the ground to survey the street dog population, over 15 wards in a radius of 2.7 kilometers. We recorded 902 dogs, but real change goes beyond numbers. It's about hearts and minds. We taught children about compassion, safety, and coexistence, changing perceptions today. So the future is built on understanding. This was a plan built on science, on community cooperation, on compassion. Every dog was approached with care, caught professionally, and transported safely. Here they get weighed, they're placed on the prep table and connect with an IV. They begin shaving and scrubbing the dog. Once all of this is done, the dogs are moved into the OT. In the OT, we have 4 operating tables, which is being used by 2 vets. So by the time one vet is done with surgery on the other table, a dog is already prepped for them on the next tables. The dog's well-being always comes first. Each dog was also vaccinated against rabies. And then something remarkable happened. The community didn't just watch, they joined. They walked into the camp not because they had to, but because they believed in our mission. In just 1 month, 1,121 dogs were sterilized and vaccinated. So I spoke with the clinic manager in Goa for an update on Ponder, and she said the local NGO continues to carry out sterilizations, and there are plans to survey to assess whether a repeat mass clinic like that is a priority soon. So next up, we have the Veterinary Task Force. So the task force is the department I work in, and it's a team of experienced vets and vet assistants based at our training centres who support organisations in different parts of the world who run at lower capacity, taking our surgical skills and development training programmes to the animal welfare organisations themselves. Municipal veterinary teams or universities who are already delivering dog and cat population management programs in their own facilities, or who are responding to remote or post-disaster settings. During the training, a high-volume spay and neuter campaign is carried out using consistent welfare-led approaches and protocols, with adaptations created collaboratively based on drug availability to support long-term protocol uptake. In 2025, the task force delivered 20 training courses, supported 27 organisations, and trained 302 vets and vet assistants. Here is a short clip of a task force training in Manali, India. And you might recognise that voice. That's Luke Gamble, our founder. population of dogs is increasing a lot. They are just breeding and multiplying.
Dogs were mainly brought in from across the town by the Managed Strays Catching Team and WVS catchers for both sterilisation and vaccination. In 2 weeks, WVS Task Force vets, alongside the participants, sterilised 150 dogs. We trained 8 local vets in surgical techniques, building skills, confidence and long-term capacity.
Okay. So next, we're going to move on to the WVS dog pop. So the dog pop is a team, sorry, let me just go back, is WVS's specialist surveying unit who work primarily in and around India alongside partners to help shape their DPM programs by generating reliable data for evidence-led initiatives. So last year, Task Force and Dogpop worked together with a Dhaka-based organization in Bangladesh called Opoyorono Animal Welfare Foundation to address the rising number of dogs on a small island, an 8-square-kilometre island called St. Martin's, just off the Bangladesh coast, which is home to around 8,000 people. There was a growing media storm that the dogs were starving, and this had triggered additional feeding from people coming from the mainland. The island is an environmentally sensitive coral island with protected wildlife, including nesting olive ridley sea turtles, and is popular with tourists. Previous DPM attempts had not been effective, and the dog population was largely unmanaged and creating real pressures. This is an example of some of the local people feeding the dogs. As you can imagine, fights break out at this point just because there's so many dogs concentrated in one area. So having a large number of dogs on a small island poses very real threats, especially from potential for rapid disease transmission should rabies be brought to the island. Thankfully, there was no known rabies on the island. The teams undertook baseline surveys in January of last year to design a program with the aim of stabilizing and reducing the dog population over time, reducing human-dog conflict, improving dog welfare, and decreasing effects on wildlife, although difficult to measure because we couldn't find a wildlife organization to partner, so that part wasn't being tracked. So the island was separated into 4 zones, and using the WVS data collection app, dog site surveys were carried out along pre-drawn paths, covering the outer beach sides and all roads and paths on land. Each route was repeated over 3 days at the same time of the morning. And the dog pot team went a step further, also using mark resites, where they marked the dogs that were seen with a different colour each day to help with correcting for detectability to estimate the population. So the survey results showed a significant proportion of the population were puppies, almost 34%. That the dogs typically lived in groups, and that over a quarter of the dogs had ear notches indicating sterilization efforts. However, doubt was cast quite early on when a female with an ear notch was seen feeding a puppy, which correlated with anecdotal issues surrounding the previous sterilizations undertaken on the island. Therefore, ear-notched females unfortunately had to be considered for surgery as well. So almost none of the dogs had visible signs of ownership, like collars. The majority of the dogs didn't have any visible signs of ill health, which was great. The majority actually had ideal body conditions, so all this feeding was working. And the majority of dogs had normal skin conditions, which was great too. But of course, there were exceptions. Some of the dogs had severe mange, and some were living with injuries, like in this case, fishing nets around the neck, because there were no veterinary care on the island at all. So the free-roaming dog population was estimated to be around 2,300 dogs, which is significant for such a small island. The overall dog density was 773 dogs per kilometre squared across the island, with the greatest dog density in the north, where the hotels and the fishing boats docked, so where there was food. The human-dog ratio was 5:1, and if we compare that to the rest of Bangladesh, where there is an 87:1 estimated ratio, St. Martin's has over 17 times more dogs per kilometre squared. So we also undertook CAP surveys, or Opoirono led that element of the project, which was brilliant, and that's short for knowledge, attitudes, and practices, as a way of understanding the community's thoughts about the dogs, whether people and dogs were coexisting, or whether there were issues. And the results were quite clear. 69% of respondents felt negatively about the dogs, and those 9% of respondents who liked the dogs said they would help with the DPM program. Thankfully, 85% of respondents had not been bitten by a dog, but that's almost 15% that had, which is still concerning considering the island had no hospital for treatment and no rabies vaccinations were available. So 32% of respondents owned a dog, and of those, 21% were said to be sterilized, and 35% were vaccinated. Interestingly, 88% of respondents, 88% of respondents said they'd fed dogs other than their own, and this was supported anecdotally from the video that was sent to us and by the overall good body condition of the dogs. And the team observed the food resources that were available to the dogs, the food waste on the left, and dog hunting along the coast or scavenging along the coast. So once the survey results were presented to government departments, we were given the green light to prepare for a spay and neuter campaign. Community consultations were undertaken with local leadership, to discuss the plans, to listen to their thoughts and insights, and to ask them to spread the word. After a huge amount of planning, the team set sail with a mountain of supplies, heading for a hotel which would be turned into a temporary sterilization camp. Around 20 to 50 dogs were caught per day by net, by hand, using biscuits, or brought by the community. And each dog was given a token numbered collar and was microchipped for easy identification. The dogs were transported in custom-made cages on top of solar electric rickshaws, which are common on the island, and kept in preoperative kennels for a few hours before and after surgery. My colleague Carlette will take you through a tour of prep first. And surgery. And we invited government vets from the mainland to observe, and we have subsequently trained a few of them at our ITCs, so they can join in next time. I'm going to whiz through the next bit because I'm hitting my time limit. So in recovery, on the left, we had classical music playing to calm the dogs. This is something we picked up at the dog rehoming centres, and your organisations may do the same. A few door panels had to be repaired during the campaign. The surgical sites are being checked before release, and they get fed a hearty meal before they are released as well. Rice, fish, eggs, although this looks a bit heavy on the rice. So post-op checks were carried out in the days after surgery, just to make sure that the dogs are recovering and there's no surgical complications. So the results, 601 dogs were spayed and neutered over the 2 weeks, and once complete, a post-intervention dog site survey was conducted. Importantly, the sterilisation coverage had increased from 27% to 65% within that time. Interestingly, the percentage of puppies cited since the survey 3 months previously had dropped from 34% to 4%, which could point to high mortality or dogs moving between those age groups. Opoirono set up a group called My Island Dogs to give the local communities ownership of their dogs and what was to be their fate. It was also a brilliant channel to speak to local communities about the dogs and find out how they were doing post-campaign. This group relayed that the breeding season was much calmer and there had been a near absence of puppies, which is a huge positive, as less puppies does mean less suffering. So we had hoped to return towards the end of last year, but geopolitics between Bangladesh and India, where many of our staff reside, prevented that. But we are hoping we can return for a month this year, with local maintenance taking place thereafter. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you found that useful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francesca. We have a few minutes to see if there are any questions. I can start, or you can start, okay? Go ahead, Paolo.
Thanks for the great presentation and for presenting those data in such an accurate way. Your capability is actually clear in the sense that you presented 2 examples, and you actually vaccinated, sterilized in 1 month almost 1,200 animals in the first case and 600 in 15 days. So this is the capacity. Have you calculated the running costs of processing any single animal from the catching moment to the release moment? And second, please, how long you keep the dog in the post-operatory period before releasing?
So running cost-wise, yes, we're very focused on costs. Unfortunately, I don't have that data with me right now, but I can definitely fish that out and share that with you and anyone else that's interested. For sure, costs are prohibitive for many organizations across the world, but costs, it's very, very important that costs do not get in the way of welfare. So often we would rather groups sterilize less dogs using better protocols, more drugs, so the dogs coming through the campaigns have a better journey and are not in pain. That's more important actually than the numbers. Let me try and remember your second question. Post-op. So in this scenario, we were able to keep them for around 5 hours, 6 hours within those shallows, before they started, really wanting to get out of there, they'd fully recovered, full recumbency, and shaken off all of the effects of the anesthesia. Importantly, they wanted to have a meal, be bright and alert, and our vets would check every dog individually. If they need to stay the night, they would have stayed the night. In other projects we have, by law, we have to keep them for 3 days. And we do that. Thank you.
Anyone else? We have one more question there.
Hi, when you do the follow-ups and check on the dogs in the community, do you give any pain relief or?
Yes. So the pain relief is given, I was going to put it in there, but there's so much. Pain relief is given with the owners. So if we have adults who are on board, we will give them the analgesia to give to their dogs. If it's children with the dogs, we won't do that, just in case those pills are taken by humans. But importantly, if the dogs look like they're in pain, we will bring them back to the clinic and give them further pain relief. But yeah, we're hopeful that by the time the post-op checks are happening, like the next day, they're not too tender and they're able to go about their day. But really good question, thank you.
Okay. I'm just going to ask you to actually summarize, give us some key lessons from the example in Asia that you mentioned, which possibly could be applied at the Balkans.
Sure. I think my main take-home is that sterilization can be done in many ways, and often the dog's welfare can be kind of put to one side. Dogs can wake up in surgery, if not on the right protocols. And for us, it's incredibly important that the protocols are set out so that they are rock solid and that the journey of the dog from beginning to end is managed. And that applies anywhere you're working in the country. So I would just say that if you're unsure whether your vets are using appropriate protocols or maybe modern protocols, because things change so rapidly in the veterinary sector, I would ask those questions and probe the veterinary professionals to ask what they're using and whether there's any continued professional development opportunities for the vets that you work with.
Okay, thank you. I think that the new thing there was doing the actually surgeries not only in the clinics but also in the past presentation yesterday was like mobile teams. So perhaps that could be also something that could be included at the Balkans. Thank you so much, Francesca.
You're welcome. Thank you.